I would like to call to order the Winthrop School Committee meeting of Monday, March 31st, 2025 at 6 p.m. We are in the Harvey Hearing Room, Town Hall, 1 Metcalf Square. This is we have a public hearing, but since we have nobody here for a public hearing, I'm going to open up the regular meeting. We are not being televised live. We are, however, being recorded to be televised later. May I have the roll call, please?
Ms. Leonard? Yes. Mr. Lettieri?
Yeah.
Mr. Matucci?
Yep.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Here.
Ms. Barry? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Here. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Purinton, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for Norma Gobiel.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Gobiel passed away peacefully at home on March 8th at the age of 95. Mrs. Gobiel was the executive assistant to the superintendent of the Winthrop Public Schools for 35 years. This is a position that she cherished and performed with the utmost integrity and passion. Mrs. Gobiel was the grandmother of Jessica and Jennifer Gobiel, who are both current teachers in the Winthrop Public Schools. And she was the mother of retired athletic director Peter Gobiel. She was also a great-grandmother of 3, including my 2 grandchildren, Quinn and Crew. In thinking about Mrs. Gobiel, the words that come to mind are school district historian, professional, perfectly and impeccably dressed, and just a classy lady. She will be missed by everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no one here for public comment, and unfortunately we are not on Zoom, so we can't open up public comment on Zoom. I do want to reiterate, though, that the committee is open to hearing from people, and I encourage people, if they cannot be here in person, that they can submit statements ahead of time. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2025?
Motion. Second.
Motion by Mr. Lettieri, second by Ms. Petrie. May I have a roll call vote?
Yes, Ms. Leonard?
Abstain?
Mr. Lettieri?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Barry?
Abstain.
Ms. Powell?
Abstain. May I have a motion to approve warrant SVW 25-17 in the amount of $109,034.52?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lettieri, second by Mr. Purinton. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Ms. Leonard?
Yes.
Mr. Lettieri?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Barry? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Yes. May I have a motion to approve payroll warrant SPW 25-18 in the amount of $924,415.26?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Purinton. Second. Second by Ms. Leonard. Any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Leonard? Yes. Mr. Lettieri?
Abstain.
Mr. Matucci?
Abstain.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes. For the buildings and grounds, I'm gonna group these together. We have a request by the Winthrop Youth Lacrosse and by El Desportivo Alice, thank you, for a soccer game. May I have a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
Any discussion?
For the youth lacrosse, is it a season or just a day of games or?
So they're scheduled, they scheduled a bunch of games, so they usually do them in a block. So they'll schedule the games, the upcoming days, the day of games, they're usually a full day.
Okay.
It's usually a couple of games in a row.
And this is for Miller Field for both
Yes.
of them? Okay.
And to verify they've been notified of all fees and charges
Yes,
and.
and we've they're both current and have all their insurances and everything they need to have in terms of applying to utilize the building.
Fantastic. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Do we have a budget subcommittee report?
Yes, we're gonna do the public hearing first, then
Sure.
we should vote that after.
Vote after a public hearing?
Yes.
Open the public, okay.
Then we go out of that, and go into this, and we'll do that.
Exactly.
We go out of that, go into this, and then do that.
Okay.
If you can follow.
So go back into public hearing because even though there's no.
We should go to
it's
public
still
hearing
go
after,
back.
yeah.
Okay, then I will
Close out this meeting.
close out a motion to adjourn this meeting to go into a public hearing.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then I will open up the public hearing for the 2025-2026 school budget.
Want me to start?
Go right ahead, Jeff.
So as everyone knows, we've been working on the budget for about a year now, or a little more. So I just wanna do a quick overview. My machine will allow me to do it. One sec.
Let's go through this.
We'll go into this. Okay. So the budget drivers, when we were building the budget, and up until this point, so it's been an evolving process. I put up on the screen for you to see, we knew a lot of things, coming into this, we knew we received 58.5% approximately of the town's total revenue minus some chargebacks. We knew we were coming to the end of being able to maintain our staffing and services with a budget below level service, similar to the budget we have this year, which was reduced by 1.45 million to what we had asked for our school's budget. We knew that we were using and maximizing all the outside accounts that we have in a revolving account to the best of our ability to balance the offsets and structural deficits that we had in terms of having to reduce by 1.45 million. We knew that we were coming into an FY26 year where at the end of FY25, the 7 unions within the school department's contracts were up. We knew that eligible teachers would move up steps and make their contractual step if they could, if they were not already on the top step, and change lanes if they did so within the time frame. I believe we have 26 eligible teachers who met the timeline to change lanes, meaning they advanced their degree status, for example, from bachelor's 15 to a master's degree and the like. We also knew that all the ESSER and COVID funding was ending in August of this past year, and those funds would no longer be available to support us through FY25 or 26. And we've been watching the special education and homeless transportation costs rise. They have risen, I believe, 8% this year, and we're not sure about FY26, but they're trending upwards. And we also know that the current and retired employee health benefits were gonna be rising, and I believe they're upwards of 15%.
Yep, 15%.
Unfunded mandates is something we can talk about all day long, they never end and they just keep on coming. And also we are recognizing, at least we're still in a historic inflation rate. And the cost of everything we do in terms of buying materials, supplies and contracts with the groups that fund that support our curriculum are all rising above 2.5%. So we knew that. I gave folks just a quick overview of what the categories in the budget mean. And this is something that you all know, but it's good for public to take a peek at. I also took a look at the requested level service that we asked for last school year versus what we were appropriated for this school year. So if you just take a look at the bolded numbers, our full operational budget that we requested for this current school year was $40,845,769. When you minus the grants that we had proposed that we were going to have available grants and revenue sources last year, right about the same time. We believed we would have about 3.2 million. And then towards the end of last year, after we got the appropriation from the town, we had to shift a little bit, and we used the additional monies we had in outside revenue, and came up with a budget of 36,141,803, which is the budget we are working off of now. The important thing to look at is the uptick in the grants and revenues that we were hoping to use at this time last year, and then what we had to shift to use this year to get through this school year. So there's an additional 600,000 in grants and revenues that we used this year, which flattened some of our outside revenue sources. So it's just a good sidewalk to look at what we had requested and then what we actually got for this year. That's just another snapshot of the actual budget of this year, what the total salaries are, the expenses. Benefits other is the money that's being used for all of the outside accounts that we took into the school's budget 2 years ago: health insurance, retiree health, liability, unemployment, and the like. And if you can see, again, we jumped that number for access to grants and outside revenue sources up to 3,838,000. And that allowed us to open the school year with the appropriation from the town of 36,141,803.
Just ask a clarifying question on
Sure.
this point to make sure that's understood. This 3.8 number.
Yeah.
Is that one-time opportunities, or is this grants that you get continually?
So it's a combination of state and federal grants, and the appropriation you get for those state and federal grants is pretty consistent year to year. So that's Title I, the Title II grant, special education, it's called the 240 grant. And then, so that those are usually pretty consistent up until recently, with the changes in our government. So we could typically predict that we were gonna get about the same amount of money in those grants each year. It's important to know that the majority of those grants pay salaries of our current teachers. So you can sort of bank on that year to year. Now, the issue is salaries and expenses that you use that grant money for go up every year, and the grants themselves stay pretty flat. And then the other aspect of that 3,800,000 is outside revenue. So preschool tuition, some of the circuit breaker money, E-rate funding, the I-20 international student accounts. And so those are one-time fundings, but they work on a reimbursement. So you sort of have an idea or a sense of what you're getting, except for the I-20. So with the I-20, it's based on how many students you take in. So those accounts have money in it, and then you use that money to offset your current budget, if that makes sense. The concern moving forward is the structure of our government and whether or not our federal grants are gonna come in at all. And that's not just me thinking that, that's the superintendent association, listening, and talking to folks at the State House and wondering whether or not those grants are gonna be lowered or completely eliminated. I can tell you that we will be one of probably 99% of schools in the Commonwealth that if those grants are eliminated, we're in a lot of trouble. So as we planned for FY26, we were somewhat conservative with those grant numbers in terms of how we're allocating salaries to those federal grants, just because of the concern. I leased 9 C cuts 100 years ago, and they come out of nowhere. So we could wake up tomorrow and those grants could be gone. Usually that's not that much of a risk, but the climate that we're hearing is that it is, definitely a risk to all public schools.
Thank you.
I think I was. So then the FY26 budget. So moving forward to FY26, you've had the budget in front, you got back it last week and I believe again this week. And in that budget, it shows you the total amount of salaries, the expenses, benefits. You guys have it line item by line item, and we'll make that public as well. so that folks can see that once the school committee fully votes that budget. We'll post in the paper, the budget by series, so similar to what you see here, but it will be broken down by series and not line item. Here is a snapshot of sort of when I say by series, what that looks like. So I broke it down so that you could see what the level service budget request for salary and expenses is in a little bit of a better snapshot than the 25-page document that you have that has all the different line items. So I broke it out in terms of the staff salary for each school, the longevity of the teaching staff that is in that building, and then other salary, which are, the other salary category is lead teachers, custodial overtime, Laurie, go through a couple of them with me. Activities and clubs, and the like. So if you look in your budget where it's listed under other salary, you can see every one of those categories. Then I put into that what we anticipate being able to utilize for current revenue accounts that we have and the grants as we're predicting them. And the federal grants, again, are somewhat conservative. And when you add up the staff, the longevity, the staff salaries, the longevity, and then the other salary categories, and you minus out what we're going to be appropriating towards a grant, hoping that the grants are revenue sources we know of right now. You go over the far right column, and when you add all of those up, that would be the appropriation for salaries that we would need from the town. Same thing with the expenses. These are all the expenses for each school building. And those expenses, again, are broken down in that budget. You can see them line item by line item. And when you add those two together, the sum for the it says sum of LEA, meaning what we would need from the appropriation from the town. You add the expenses and the sum of the salaries that we would need. Slide. Here is how it looks. The total salary for all operational cost of the district is $25,341,107. The expenses, the operational expenses to run the school alone, $7,196,667. And then the other expenses are those line items that we took back in the budget 2 years ago: unemployment, healthcare insurance, retiree health insurance, liability insurance, and the list goes on and on. So when you add all of those three lines up, you come up with a budget of $42,660,068. That's the true total operation cost for the entire school without backing out anything into a grant or a revenue. So when we figure out the budget, we know what the total expenses and the total salaries of the school are. We know what we anticipate for grants and revenues. Again, that amount of money is primarily salaries. That right now, that number is $2,494,597. And you would subtract that from the total operational costs of the school district to get to a number where you are asking the town to appropriate $40,165,471. Just history-wise, we know we're about 58.5% of the town's total revenue collection, minus chargebacks, things like charter school chargebacks, vocational school chargebacks, and the like. Right now, the prediction is we'll get about $36,800,000 and maybe more from the town, and that's how we end up figuring out what our operational deficit is going to be. So a year ago, we predicted, which is so early, and it's still early to know, and I'll get to that slide in a second, but it's so early to be able to predict a budget a year ahead of time. So a year ago, we predicted we would be about $3.5 million in the red, and we're pretty close. This number can change daily, and it can change because we could have a student move in from a collaborative, we could have one teacher resign and have to hire another teacher at a higher cost. If you find a teacher to fit, let's say a Spanish teacher resigned and we couldn't find somebody at the same salary, we had to go a little higher. It could also go down if we hired somebody a little bit lower. And then there's the day-to-day business of the school that can change that number on a dime. We have a boiler go, we have a hole in a roof, we have unexpected transportation costs. So this budget continues to evolve until June 30th, when we have our close of our school district's budget for this year. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that for a second. So information needed from my end and from the school department's end that creates this budget prior to finalizing what the actual reductions would have to be, say we did not get the allocation that we asked for. So we've learned over the past several years that if we ask for a level service budget and we receive less than that we have to reduce or adjust things at the last minute, typically towards the end of May and the beginning of June, because we cannot spend more money than we receive from the town. So that being said, some of the things that we really need to continue to look at, the end of the year balances, we froze this budget in January again. Not totally frozen, there are certain things that we have to pay for, but we've been very tight. We were tight to begin with, and we continue to be frugal with any spending at all, knowing that we have this looming deficit ahead of us. So we're gonna look at that come probably the end of May, the beginning of June, and see if there is any monies that we would have left over that we could, from saving, from not spending. Not left over because we had the money and we over predicted, but more so because we froze the budget, and see if there is any ability to prepay allowable items for FY26, which would reduce the overall deficit that we were looking at. But I also need to know what the final allocation is gonna be from the town. We anticipate it to be 800, because that's what we have been used to, between 600 and 800. And that's where you have that's where I predicted the $36,800,000 figure. The big one is the override outcome. Knowing that override outcome will also help us determine what the deficit, if any, will be next year. We'll have to look at resignations and replacements, any turnover at the end of the school year, who's leaving and how we would bring in new staff. Certainly we would be very focused on hiring at a lesser amount of money than the person that left. The final healthcare costs, it may be higher or lower than the current cost prediction, and that's because if we lose staff at the end of the school year who are on benefits and somebody comes in who doesn't take benefits, then that's a savings. So that may give us a little bit of wiggle room. The final FY26 out-of-district student tuitions is something. We have 2 pending cases that are headed to hearing. And so the outcome of those are the students that are in our district, and we're headed to hearings because the parents have requested an out-of-district placement. I'm confident that the students will remain in the district based on the programming that we have, but we still need to wait for that. We need to wait for the grant allocations, primarily the federal grant allocations, because those are the ones that are at high risk for reduction or elimination. And we wanna look at our reimbursements. Circuit breaker is a reimbursement account where we get reimbursed next school year for students who went out this school year. However, the state has the right to reduce the percentage rate that they reimburse us by at any given moment. They can reduce that. And that's similar to the 9C cuts. If money has to be allocated somewhere else in the state, they have the right to reduce the chapter's circuit breaker account reimbursement rate. And so they don't even need to give us much notice when they do that. And then again, looking at all the balances of any available revenue accounts for FY26, so money that's coming in next year. For instance, preschool tuitions that are coming in. Looking at that, right now we're making sure that people pay by the quarter, so they're paying quarterly payments. So relying on that 100% can be rough, because if a student does not come back after they've paid the first quarter payment and now the student parents can't afford to continue to send a child or they move, then that revenue that we predicted doesn't come back unless we replace that seat with a new child who's paying tuition. So this is just an idea of why it's so difficult to predict actual the full amount of reductions that we would make, who they would be, what class they would be, what grade level it would be at this point in time. We still have some work to do before we can get to that higher level of naming a grade level or naming a program specifically that will be cut. However, it's difficult to do that, I would say, and identify those things in this moment, but we have to prepare for that because the clock is ticking. So I'm gonna give you this page. This is the overview of the anticipated reduction in the total amount of deficit that I showed you on that page. If we were to do staff reductions, and again, this is a higher level look, we have a much more detailed level look, but it's sort of like a window shade where you have to predict the worst and identify where that may be with my administrators and school personnel. Hoping to never have to get there, but being able to have a worksheet or a prediction sheet that says, if we have to go there, here is where we're gonna start. And in worst case scenario, here is how we would achieve that number. So, we looked at classroom teachers, and that includes the teachers union, there's several sections of this. The Winthrop Teachers Union has teachers in it, has ESPs in it, has nurses in it, and has secretaries in it. And there's also a custodial union, and there's also a cafeteria workers union. So when we looked at certified teaching positions or certified positions in the school district, that includes guidance counselors, specialists, classroom teachers, custodians, because they're a group of their own. And then another category in the second bullet would be the district and school support staff. That's where you would find ESPs, lunch support staff, lunch workers, parent information center people. So when we did the entire list of how each school would reduce its staff in a manner that would impact students the least, because it's gonna impact students no matter what. But we had to look at how it would impact them the least in terms of classroom teachers, what would class size look like. We came up with a total of 29.5 positions in that category. 8 positions in the category of ESPs or lunch staff or other support staff, tutors that are in the building. And then in addition to that, that relates directly to staff, stipended positions and curriculum support positions. So we have, for instance, at the Gorman Fort Banks, we have a part-time math tutor, which is a retired teacher that comes in for about 15 hours a week. We have a couple of those positions, and they all support students in their classroom during the day, but primarily during blocks that are called RTI, response to intervention. So looking at the student data and their test scores, identifying who needs additional support, and grouping those kids and having people come in and help within the classroom to increase those the students' capabilities. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of bodies. It saddens me to even think about it. It aggravates me that I would have to actually act on it. Should the override not pass, or should our revenue not increase, and should outside grants decrease? But you have to really break it out into 2 categories when you're thinking about how you're gonna come up with $3.5 million. The only other way to come up with additional money is to go to your expense lines. And so we took a look at all the expense lines across the board, including expense lines including expenses that are covered by user fees. So we looked at the technology lines in all schools, translation lines, so we've been translating a lot of materials. You guys see that in all the documents that we put out, all the communication to our families. We looked at all of those lines. We looked at our current athletic lines that we have. And then we looked at staff professional development, which is how our staff takes all of the new curriculum that we've been implementing over the last, 3 to 5 years. That requires training and upkeep and continuous training for staff. And we looked at reducing those lines, special education contractual service district lines. So if we have consultants that are helping out with, say, our therapeutic behavioral classrooms or our students with autism who are, service very well here. Oftentimes, we have outside groups that come in and help not only train teachers and consult to teachers, but also consult to families. These are portions of student support that are not mandatory, but it's what makes us be able to keep kids within the school district and not have them go to outside placements. So again, because they're not mandatory, we looked at those line items. Maintenance and facility lines, which is just kicking the can down the road for further problems if you cut those lines. However, if there are certain things that are not mandatory, we looked at reducing those. Curriculum, we made identified some curriculum that we could do without. It's definitely, significantly impactful on kids if you start reducing curriculum that's helping kids make academic or social emotional progress, mental health progress, but not mandatory. Homeless transportation and the technology management line. I am fairly confident that the reimbursement for transportation, which comes in the year after you do it, so it'll be rolling in July. I'm fairly confident we could reduce those line items in the budget and offset them with the incoming revenue. Again, if you're depending upon something that you're hoping comes in on time, but it would be very tight. And then the last expense line that we reduced to get to $808,000 worth of reductions was the tuition lines, the special education tuition lines. Those are mandatory to pay, and the circuit breaker comes in the year after you've spent your money, you get a certain portion back. Department of Revenue wants you to keep that money in your coffers for at least until April. And typically, we keep that money in our coffers till April and use it to offset the following year's tuitions. We did that this year, so we took a look at that circuit breaker line and what we anticipate maybe coming in next year, and we would be using that money to pay the tuitions of the kids who are coming in. So usually that money comes in and you set it aside to offset your upcoming school year's budget. We wouldn't be doing that. We would be using that money to come in. It would come in and go right back out to pay for the tuition. So if we drop the tuition line out of the current LEA budget and cut it by about $640,000, $540,000. That money would not be available for us for FY '27 or for any emergency that we had. So those are very high level, not identifying individual positions, but I can assure you that we drop to the high level by doing that back end work of identifying positions. The impacts of all of it are pretty significant. The teacher reduction impact is an automatic major increase in class size. And if after the 5th, if we have to talk about that, we'll be coming in with detail about what grade level class sizes will be. It's no different than what has been out there in the literature for an increase. Right now, we're in the low 20s. At the elementary level, we'd be going up to the 30s in those classes. This reduction of a couple of ESPs, are part of that. Grade level teachers are definitely a part of that K through 12. The identification again of those positions, April 6th, it's a possibility that we'll start doing that very quickly to get back to the school committee in terms of exactly what those reductions would look like at each level. I feel like I'm missing a page. I feel like I'm missing a reduction page. Yeah, I don't know why So if you look at, won't come up on the screen, but if you
Should
look
be.
at,
Okay.
you can see that for a second. It becomes a reality when you take a look at the page that says salary and expense reduction summary. And it's an overview of the reductions by, I say by category, and it's actually by school. So the Fort Bank's reduction in salaries to meet the $3,365,471 moment in time deficit that we would see. So salaries at the Fort Banks would be cut by $580,641, and their expense lines would be cut by $84,552. Cumming School salary lines would be cut by $534,100, and their expense lines would be cut by $76,727. The Winthrop Middle School salary lines could be cut by $417,900 and expenses by $27,175. The high school salary lines would be reduced by $573,853. Their expenses would be reduced by $26,175. The district, meaning anything that is not a salary or a line item that's tied to an individual school, would be reduced by $450,909, and the expenses by $593,439, for a total combined reduction in the overall budget of $3,365,471. Again, that is the worst case scenario, and if the override goes through and it passes, those reductions will not happen to that level. If the override goes through and the grants are reduced significantly, we may be having another discussion about some reductions. But there's still all of those items that I talked about that we're still having to watch to make sure that we are not just reducing to reduce by any means. The last thing we want to reduce is teaching staff for our students. I mean, there's not much left to reduce in the Winthrop Public Schools budget. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and throw that out there. So this is a lot of information to digest, but again, that higher level, I can assure you, and I have it in my book, that higher level of exactly how many teachers per building, what grade level, will be ready for this committee as a second step, should the override not pass. And then we probably have to go to a third step when we know the finality of what the town appropriation is gonna be, and what the grant and revenue offsets will be able to be. And so some of the reductions, like the reductions in the district line, you're talking about reductions in the athletics and co-curricular activities, and those would have to be offset in order not to completely not have either athletics or co-curricular activities. They'd have to be offset by user fees, and we have a full layout of what that could look like as well. So it's a lot of information. I just think it's important.
Let me open to questions from the committee.
Yes, so one of the big questions I have is around benefits and insurances for our staff. I know that we inherited that line last year. I have questions in regards to the amount of the increase year over year. I think I heard that it was gonna be 15%. That is astronomical. And I'm wondering what measures are in place on the town side to try to negotiate better rates for insurances year over year. I mean, I know at my company every year they look at different companies and try to keep the rates as low as possible, whether that's like implementing something with a higher upfront out of pocket, or just looking at different insurance companies to try to keep that rate down. I mean, 15%, I've never heard of such a thing. It's crazy. So I'd like to understand from the town side, and maybe that's Mr. Cook or Mr. Lettieri, what's being done to gain cost efficiencies with our insurances, and how do we evaluate vendors year over year?
Well, we've had a contract with the GIC, which is coming up. We have been looking around, looking at other cities and towns. The 14.7 or whatever percent that we're looking at right now is below many other cities and towns, looking at 17, 18, 19% increases. We definitely are looking around, and it might be less options, it might be, like you say, higher co-payments or whatever, but it's something that we're looking at, it's something that you need to get union agreement on as well, if you're going to change a plan.
But I'm asking specifically, do we evaluate year over year, or do we sign like 3-year contracts?
We had a contract that we signed,
For how many years?
it was probably, I think, 5 years way back. But again, that's a contractual thing too with unions, so you're gonna have to get unions involved if you're gonna change insurance.
Okay, and then, do we know, what the, so timing wise
I'm sorry, let me jump in with the GIC because I think there's a history that is important here to understand that was a cost saving contract that we
Yep, saved the town
So
over
that
$1
was-
million.
That was the reason why we got into such a long contract. It's not like it wasn't evaluated, that was an opportunity that we had for cost savings.
It was,
right now it's
I
not?
just want to add something so that our North Shore Superintendent Roundtable meeting, we all were talking about this, and everybody in GIC is by far the lowest. Some of the towns, Boxford, Topsfield, Middleton, those, Masco, those areas, they've got 19 to 21%, and they've got 3 different towns with 3 different levels, and but a lot of them are in the 17, 18 range on the rest of the North Shore.
It's like Maya is
Maya,
significantly more than the GIC.
So, and I don't, nobody really knows, like, I mean, just like Lisa was saying, the inflationary times that we're living in, it's just driving everything up. But anybody on the North Shore that's in GIC is in the same ballpark as us, and we're the lowest. It's just crazy.
Do you have a GIC related?
It's related to health insurance, but it was specific for GSC.
My other question was, Lisa, did you include a 15% increase in your numbers in the?
Yes, for healthcare.
Yeah.
So I had the actuals from the town, so we look at them, if not monthly, to see it's sort of like a game, to see who's in and who's out. Because it's such a unknown, you have a number, when we took over those benefits, we got the number that the town was moving that line item that they used to have over to the school's budget with the same budget amount. And so I had to predict what was it gonna be for next year, and they actually give you the prediction, so we know what it's gonna be, but we just don't know how many people are gonna be on, say,
Yeah, no, I get that.
insurance, and kind of bounces. So we do get accurate, inflation rates from the town to put into the budget. 15% was a shocker, considering if we're really not, the school department's really not in the business of understanding, those healthcare benefits, but whether they go up and they're in our line item budget, or whether they go up and they're in the town's line item budget. If they were still on the town side, my guess is the town's appropriation to us would be far less than it had traditionally been. We were used to not having to worry about those things. But if the town was gonna give us 800 and they went up, the 15%, then the town would probably give us 200 because they have to cover the costs no matter what on their side. So if you think of it as like one bucket of money, and there's so many categories. It's not just health insurance, there's retiree health insurance, there's unemployment, all of those numbers have gone up. What's come down is the debt exclusion, but it didn't come down as much as the health insurance went up.
And my other question is not health insurance related.
My question was, I don't know if it's a question necessarily or a statement, but I'm wondering if, or I'm hopeful that, the town is considering deviating from the 60-40 split, since we had this discussion at the start of the 23-24 school year. And we talked a lot about the absorption of the insurance costs then, and I asked specifically, is this going to impact the school budget? And now I feel like this is one of the biggest expense increases that we're seeing, and I know that there are expenses all over the place and that it's not the biggest portion of our budget, I recognize that, but 15% is a bigger jump than the other percentage increases. So I guess I'm wondering if, like I said, or I'm hopeful that the town is considering deviating from the 60-40 split that we just started talking about last year with the absorption of these costs and now the significant increase, since it's impacting our budget so much.
Yeah, I don't think the town's deviating from that right now, and again, like Lisa said, it's 15 or close to 15% increase in the school's health insurance is approximately like $750,000 increase, right? Which basically absorbs the majority of what you usually get from the town. Also on the town side, it's increasing 15% too, which is a little bit less than $750, but approaching over $500,000. So again, it is, like Lisa said, one pot of money. The schools do get the majority of the money from the town, as it should, with the size of the department it is. It's a little more difficult on the school side since it's a bottom line budget, and the allocation can be looked at in many different ways than the towns. Most of those, almost $10 million increase in cost are relatively consistent costs, like the mortgage basically on the high school and such, and Lisa was talking, superintendent was talking earlier about the amount of potential cuts, and that potentially gets you down to a budget that's feasible if you had to do that, but then you have to look at the offset of that, which, there were numbers there approaching 40, 45 positions, which now you're looking at an additional 10 or 12 or 15 positions just to pay unemployment for those. So it's a never-ending cycle, but I don't think the allocation is the problem. I think it's the unfunded mandates, I think it's the inflation, I think it's the increase in cost. I mean, we obviously hope that grants aren't affected as much as we're anticipating, but I think you have to be, and I think Lisa has been conservative in her forecasting, and we gotta hope for the best, and again, we hope that people understand the situation.
I can honestly tell you, after working this budget now for 8 years and being involved in every purchase and expense the school district has, we have a revenue problem. There is, and anybody is welcome to come and sit with me if you can withstand me, and look at our expenses and what we purchase and what we buy compared to, pick any other school district you wanna pick. There is no evidence of overspending on anything. We're scraping revenue accounts and charging people money to come to schools so that we can pay for the bare minimum. And that's a sad state, so I firmly believe that the school department does not have a spending issue. And I've heard that commentary a little bit over the past couple of months, just in terms of teachers' salaries. If you're gonna compare our teacher salaries to other communities, please pull their collective bargaining agreement and compare apples to apples. Total number of days taught in a year. Other expenses that other school districts have that we, do not. Salaries and how our salaries are, laid out compared to other schools. Look at our budget for expenses for our students and the fees that we currently charge. $225 for athletic fees doesn't sound like a lot, but we should have no fees for athletics and co-curricular activities. Kids should be able to come to school, and even if their parents don't have enough money for them to participate in something, that shouldn't be the reason that they don't have the same life experience as everyone else around them. And trust me when I tell you, we don't have a lot of extras compared to the surrounding communities. No cooking, no sewing, no medical careers. We don't have band, we don't have after-school programs that are free to every kid. That's the position we're in, so.
Do you have other questions?
Thank you.
Are there any? Yes.
I just actually have a comment and just to say thank you, Lisa. I mean, you've been trying to read tea leaves for a year now. And I know you've worked pretty hard to see this and to know that you were basically asking for $3.5 million. Just the fact that this all sort of adds up in precisely the way with all of the moving pieces, I know how much work has gone into that. And I just want to say, no stone has been left unturned, clearly, in your budgeting and in your search for money. And I think, just as a committee member, I just want to compliment your fiduciary responsibility, the care and time with which you go over these budget numbers to exhausting degrees. I'll just try to say something positive. I think this campaign has been tremendously well run. It is astounding. I feel that finally maybe we're getting to people to make them understand. But this is a really well-run shop, and you've done a tremendous job. And again, I just hope that people will come out and vote on Saturday for this, because we obviously need this, and you have been an exemplary steward of our financial status, so I just wanna thank you for that.
No, thank you. I mean, I'm sad that I predicted it and that I was accurate, I have to tell you. But that's the depth that I am aware of in terms of the expenditures that we have and the money that we spend and how we spend it. It saddens me that I was right, you know, gives me a little hope that I actually believe in myself, that I do know what I'm doing. Because it's been so consistent. And you know, $200,000 or $150,000 off in a prediction from a year ago is not bad, you know, because $150,000 would be more than district tuition on a dime. So I'm just sad that that's where we're at.
Any other questions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing and resume the regular meeting?
Motion, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Resuming the budget subcommittee report.
So the last group meeting, we were short some members, so we did not vote on, we did not present to you one of the items that we voted on at the budget subcommittee, which is the amount of this budget that was just presented now. It's a level service budget, which usually we vote to recommend a needs-based budget, but this year, we were asking the taxpayers to give us an amount of money to level fund us. We didn't feel that it would be appropriate for us to ask for a needs-based budget this year. We're tasked with advocating what's best for the students, which would be a little bit more for a needs-based. But we can't do that this year because we're asking the taxpayers to give us more money just to be level service. So the vote was to recommend to the full committee the budget for FY '26 would be $40,165,471. And that was a positive vote on the committee.
Can I have a motion then to approve the needs-based, level services request of $40,165,471.
Motion.
Second.
Open this for discussion.
Do we have, do we have an idea of what, I'm just curious, not necessarily that I want to say that we should present a needs-based budget, but I think it's important to have those needs that we would want in a needs-based budget identified. I think last year you had a sheet that just outlined, like, these would be the needs that we
Pull out last year's, which is a combination of the past 7 years.
Okay, that's
So
fair.
it grows every year.
Yeah, I just don't wanna lose sight of those, like,
Yeah.
even though,
I
you know,
agree.
I think it's
I can bring
important.
that to the committee so you have an understanding of where what, you know, if I had $1 million, you know,
Right,
I sing the song, but I might hurt people, so.
no, I just wanna make sure we're not losing sight of what that needs-based
Right. No, I
stuff
agree.
should look like.
I can put that together for you.
So Julie, just so you know, it was presented to us
Yeah.
at the meeting.
Okay.
So there's no way we're gonna be forgetting about what we really need.
Yeah.
But we just felt as though this year, because of the situation,
No, I get it.
and we're asking these taxpayers to more money.
Yep.
That would be kind of a slap in the face for us to ask them for more money.
No, fair, totally fair.
And I understand what you're saying, but we're not losing sight of that at all.
But this is a stuck in neutral project.
Any other comments? Hearing none, may I have a roll call vote?
Yes, Ms. Leonard?
Yes.
Mr. Lettieri?
Stay.
Mr. Masucci?
Yes,
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Barry? Yes. Ms. Powell?
Yes. And that leaves us with the superintendent's report.
Just a few things, if I can keep my head on straight. I don't know if anyone was able to see the art show at E.B. Newton, so there's lots of student presented work, and that art show is open to the public on Thursdays and Saturdays through April. Posted on the town's website, some really great examples of our student work and then other people in the community. April is Autism Awareness Month. World Autism Day is April 2nd. You will see our staff and students doing all kinds of cool stuff in our buildings to recognize Autism Awareness Month, and the community is also doing that as well, especially the police station does an amazing job with it every year. Registration is open for Spark After School Program, 21st Century Grant Funded Program. Information is being shared with families via our websites. Did I mention that the override, vote is Saturday, all day, 7 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Today was the last day to submit your mail-in ballot. So if you need any more information on the override, you can take a ride out of town and stand at the bridge and see folks there. Certainly call the school department. I encourage anybody who has any questions about the budget to email, or the override, to email me at lhoward@winthrop.k12.ma.us. If you can't phone a friend to get the information, if you're frustrated with something, I'd love to talk about it, so please call me, as opposed to making a decision based on what somebody told you. It's more helpful for you to have the facts in place when you go to make your decision. Enrollment, just a quick overview on enrollment. We're still hovering at 2,008 students. So I'm fully convinced that that number is not wrong or gonna dramatically drop. It is definitely an increase. We're still diligently working on residency, so numbers fluctuate day to day. But 2008 is a pretty consistent number. School kindergarten registration is opening April 7th to the 30th. So anybody who is turning or will be 5 on and or before August 31st. August 31st is eligible for kindergarten. If you have any question about whether or not your child is eligible, please call the Gorman-Fort Bank School, speak to Principal Reynolds. Just quick at the Gorman-Fort Banks, PTO Spring Fling is April 11th. The report cards went out this Friday. April 2nd, 9th, and 16th are half days for parent-teacher conferences, and that's very well communicated to families. They're doing all kinds of stuff for Autism Awareness Week by the day at the Gorman-Fort Banks. Coming school is pretty similar. They have the same half-day parent-teacher conferences, so parents, please look out for that. Happy to report that at the middle school, we hired a long-term substitute for the remainder of the year in the art classroom. So we want to welcome Carly Morin to our staff. She started today. At the middle school, April 2nd is the end of quarter 3. So students, if you have any work that you need to hand in, get it in. And the staff is this week participating in MCAS training after school as part of their principal meeting. The high school quarter 3 grades close on April 3rd. Remind myself of that when I get home for my own child. And again, it's Wellness Month on top of Autism Awareness Month, and so there's tons of projects going on at the high school. It's well outlined on parent information communication portal as well as the school's website. Athletics, it's the first week. Our official first game was last Friday, and the girls lacrosse team won 8-7 in overtime against Saugus. We were not sad. And it was Zoe Lang's first game as a varsity coach, so congratulations. And Angela Kasha scored the overtime goal, and Tegan Pereira had above a hat trick. She had 4 goals, so that was great. Baseball and softball open up this Wednesday versus Salem. Lacrosse opens up tomorrow at home versus Malvern Catholic. And track has a meet on Wednesday in Marblehead. Public relations is a little long. Obviously, we're congratulating the boys state championship hockey team. We have a joint meeting tomorrow. We will be giving the students citations. Mike Hogerson got his 100th point. Mikey Donahue, who's the goalie, received the MIAA Boston Bruins Sportsmanship Award along with 23 other athletes from Massachusetts. It was a pretty high award for him. Isabella Rice made the national team for gymnastics, which is pretty amazing. The top 20 girls in the state of Massachusetts make this team. So Izzy rocked it. She is the 5th gymnast from Winthrop Public Schools, Winthrop High School, to make the nationals, which is pretty impressive that we make that level of kids gets to nationals. She'll represent Massachusetts in Fort Myers in May. Isabella Rice and Zoe Ray qualified for states in the bars event, and the team also qualified, and they finished in 9th place. Aaron Armistead qualified for the states in the hurdles for track, and both boys and girls hockey are co-NEC champs, which is pretty cool. Hats off to the All-Star and All-Conference League MVP, Talia Martucci. Girls Hockey All-Conference, Amelia Spencer. Girls Hockey All-Stars, Evelina Coffey, Tegan Pereira, and Riley Toes. Boys Hockey All-Conference, Mike Donahue, Mike Hogerson. And Boys Hockey All-Stars, Philly Von Corey, Jojo Pumfret, and Aiden Serbilis. Girls Basketball All-Stars, Zoe Bogus and Bailey Ferguson. And Boys Basketball All-Stars, Noah Bayesdorfer. So catching up on some of the end of our winter athletics. So some more co-curriculars. The Drama Society performed Woven at the preliminary round of the METG Drama Fest on March 1st. The play was written by junior class student Chelsea Long, and we have the METG All-Star Company Award going to Chelsea Long. The playwright going to Maddie Carroll. The prop design award going to Jillian Bonapani. Acting, Olivia Scorzella. Another acting award, Holly Nimblett. And another acting award to Chelsea Long. The Winthrop Middle School Project 351, the Ambassador project, is amazing. I don't know if you've seen it, but Project 351 is pretty cool. Audrey Carroll is our ambassador, and she is working with Cradles to Crayons to host a clothing drive for children ages newborn to 12 years old. You can donate starting this week on March 27th through April 9th and drop stuff off at the Winthrop Middle School or the Winthrop School of Performing Arts. That's the lobby of the building. Donated items that they're looking for: shirts, pants, shoes, coats, winter stuff, summer stuff, PJs, socks, anything that you can think of that children would benefit from. Winthrop Elks Students of the Month for February, we're a little behind. Grade 6 for the Jaguars, Courtney Darcy and Geronimo Monaby. Grade 7 Falcons, Pedro Esteban. Grade 7 Wolves, Christian Roca. Grade 8 Ravens, Anthony Silver. And grade 8 Eagles, Ella Sabilis. Walk or bike to school day is May 7th. So get your roll on because we get it publicized pretty well. Boston Red Sox ticket raffle for Saturday, May 4th. Tickets, very detailed about where they are. But if you want to put your name in for Red Sox tickets, you can Venmo at Eileen-Johnson-73. Those proceeds are going to the S1 program, which is a program we have at Winthrop High School. And congratulations to the recipients of the 33rd Annual Winthrop Chamber of Commerce Community Awards. Student Leadership Awards, Jillian Bonapani and Bert Klein. Educational Excellence, Lauren McPhail. Coach of the Year, no surprise, Dale Dunbar. And the event, this event is going to be held on Thursday, April 17th at the Cottage Park Yacht Club from 6 to 8. Tickets are on sale for $45 a piece. We got a lot going on. That, I think, is all I have for superintendent.
Very good. Do we have any homeschool applications?
We do not.
And resignations?
Michael Barad, grade 7 science teacher, is resigning at the end of the school year, as well as our pupil personnel director of over 20 years, is an employee, Jen O'Connell, who actually took over for me when I left Winthrop Public Schools and went to Saugus. Pupil personnel director is one of the most difficult jobs in public education. Sort of next to mine. Before COVID, it was the most difficult. After COVID, it became superintendent. So in terms of filling Jen's position, we have posted the position. And I do plan on putting together a committee that will involve parents from the CPAC, as well as staff members from the district and administrators. I do have a little work that I want to do on some additional ideas. I need to see what the cadre of applicants are. Lane can tell you that, this position is not a position that you just sort of just walk into, because you think it might be cool. There is a lot of experience, this is a position that has a lot to do with the school's budget and the management of special education as a whole. So I may ask to meet with one of our subcommittees once I collect applications to see if that's gonna be the next step that we take. There are other options that we could take, and I'd like to further discuss that with the subcommittee when that time comes about, so I'll keep you updated on that. We have no additional retirements, and the postings that have been put out are, believe it or not, for the fall. Our new athletic director is eager. The continued position for special education chairperson at the Cummings School. We have been very fortunate to have Nancy DeGregorio doing that work 3 days a week, although she really doesn't work 3 days a week, she pretty much works 6. But she gets paid for 3 days a week. And we really have found the need to fill that position full-time next year, so Nancy can actually be retired. And so that we can continue to build that team, and that is all I have.
Okay, very good. Under new business, we have the citations for our amazing Winthrop High School hockey team that we will be handing out tomorrow night in a joint meeting with the school committee. May I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Motion passes. And we have a food service civil rights policy that we will send to the policy subcommittee. Okay. I have no unfinished business public relations beyond what you've already shared.
I think I did it.
Okay. I would like to give a shout out to the people who have been working diligently on our override. They are been incredibly organized. You've seen the signs out, there was the stand out tonight. And I just, it's amazing that our community has stepped up in this way, and I'm expecting that see a lot of more activity throughout this week. And I would encourage anybody who is interested in supportive of the override to reach out and become involved, because that is, as we clearly saw tonight, this will have significant impacts on our budget. Any other public relations? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Motion, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? None? Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.